Okay, so again, my name is Brian. I am the Sogie Specialist and Safe Spaces Coordinator of the Ateneo Gender Hub. And I'm here today to talk about Sogie SC. Nakita natin sa video na pinakita na nakakatuwa na video na ginawa ng SHIP. Yung pagtatanong sa iba't ibang mga tao tungkol sa Sogie at yung mga ideas and perceptions nila about it. All of us have different levels of knowledge and understanding of what Soji SE is. And what we're going to be doing this morning for the next 30 to 40 minutes is we're going to be trying to really understand and paghihimay-himayan natin kung ano ba ang ibig sabihin ng Soji SE para sa isang tao, para sa bawat tao, at para mas maintindihan natin yung mga kliyente natin kapag kaharap natin yung mga target key populations natin for HIV awareness, testing, and treatment. So, GSC, parang kanina nakita natin na iba't iba yung level of understanding natin. So, this session today, very short lang, we're going to be looking at ano ba ang ibig sabihin ng SOGIE or yung acronym na SOGIE at saka yung community na usually connected sa pag pinag-uusapan natin yung SOGIE, yung LGBTQ community. And ano ba yung iba't ibang areas na nakaka-apekto sa well-being ng mga LGBTQ individuals at ano yung pwede natin gawin ngayon after the session na meron na tayong bit-bit or baon ng mga kaalaman tungkol sa SOGIE. So una, ano ba yung SOGIE, SC, or LGBTQ? Ano ba yun? Alam ko, naririnig natin to sa TV, sa mga kaibigan natin, sa balita, at pati sa video na ginawa kanina ng SHIP. I'm sure meron tayong idea kung ano yung ibig sabihin ng SOGIE. Pero ngayon, gagawin natin, we're gonna delve into it. Pero before we talk about SOGIE in depth, may mga questions lang ako na ibabato sa inyo. Pero yung questions na to, hindi ko ini-expect na sasagutin natin sa chat box. Parang sagutin lang natin siya sa ating sarili at sa mga utak natin. So, for example, yung first question ko ay, una, back when you were born, ano yung sinabi ng doktor? So, nung pinanganak kayo, anong sinabi ng doktor base sa itsura ng katawan ninyo? It's a girl or it's a boy? Yan. So, let's just answer this for ourselves na lang. Second question, right now, in this moment, how do you see yourself? Ano yung ating paningin sa ating identity bilang isang tao? Tayo ba ay lalaki or babae? Babae ako or lalaki ako? Yan. Pangatlo, kung itatanong natin yung ibang tao sa buhay natin, ano ang kanilang magiging konsepto or pang-describe sa ating itsura, pananamit, pananalita, at saka paggalaw sa mundo? Ito ba ay mostly masculine, boyish, or like a guy? Mostly feminine, girly, or like a girl? Or blend ng masculine or feminine? So, kung itatagalog natin, mostly, ano ba yung masculine sa Tagalog? Parang lalaking lalaki or mostly babaeng babae or mix ng babae at saka lalaki. Yun. At yung third question, kanino ba tayo romantically attracted to? Or kanino ba tayong nag-fall in love or parang nagkakaroon ng mga romantic relationships? Mostly men, boys, or guys? Mostly women, girls, or ladies? Or sometimes men, sometimes women? Okay, so apat na questions to about just ourselves, and hindi ko na-expect na i-share natin ngayon, pero dalhin natin yung mga sagot natin sa next na pag-uusapan natin. Kasi next, we're going to be looking at ano ba yung mga konsepto na nakakabit sa mga tanong na nakita natin kanina. Kasama rin ng mga sagot natin, may mga konsepto rin yun. So, the first question is, back when you were born, what did the doctor say? It's a girl or it's a boy? So, the doctor was the one who said this, given yung itsura ng ating katawan, baka may ginawa silang, kung hindi masyadong klaro yung itsura ng katawan, nagbigay din sila, tinignan nila yung mga iba't ibang nag-blood test or iba't ibang mga diagnosis para makita kung ano ba yung sasabihin sa birth certificate. Ano to? Yung concept na to, this is called sex assigned at birth. So, ito yung sex or yung biological sex na na inassign sa atin ng doktor nung pinanganak tayo base sa itsura ng katawan natin. Pangalawa, this question right now, how do you see yourself? This concept is related to gender identity. Ito yung identity natin bilang isang tao na may gender, babae o lalaki. Mamaya tignan natin, hindi lang siya dalawa lang. Pangatlo, yung konsepto na to ay kung ano ba yung, kung tinanong natin yung ibang tao, ano ba yung sasabihin nila tungkol sa itsura mo, pananamit, pananalita, at paggalaw. Ang tawag dito ay, ang concept dito ay gender expression. So, ito, napupunta na, we're already going to the topic of Sogie. If you notice, Sogie acronym siya, di ba? SOGIE. So, ito, yung GE na to, ito yung gender expression. Yun yung parte ng Sogie. And yung last question is, kanino ka na napapaibig or naging attracted? Ang tawag dito ay sexual orientation. So, kung titignan natin, apat yung concepts na pag-uusapan natin at paghihimayin natin for the next few minutes. Una is sex assigned at birth. Yun yung first concept. Second is gender identity. Third is sexual orientation. And fourth is gender expression. If we notice, nandyan na yung concept natin ng Sogie. Sogie, S-O, sexual orientation. GI, gender identity. Tapos yung SOGIE, ang ibig sabihin ng E na yon, gender expression. So it's sexual orientation and gender identity and expression. Yan ang ibig sabihin ng Sogie. So, gagawin natin, if you notice, yung normal na, hindi naman normal, yung naging ugali or naging perception ng mga tao tungkol sa unfolding or yung nakikita na parang ano ba yung normal na magiging, for example, kung may bata na pinanganak at nakita ng doktor na yung katawan niya ay parang lalaki, ang ibibigay ng sex assigned at birth for this child is male. At yan yung ilalagay sa kanyang birth certificate. Okay. Ngayon, let's say boy, yung anak, male siya. What is the expectation of the gender identity of that child? Ano yung expectation natin na magiging alam niya tungkol sa kanyang gender? Paglaki niya at pag nagkaroon na siya ng malay na magsabi na ako ito. Parang can I have a few questions, like type in lang sa chat group. What do we expect for a baby na male ang sinabi ng doktor? Ano yung expectation natin na magiging gender identity ng batang ito? Kahit 1 or 2 questions lang na type in the chat box. Mabilis lang. Ano yung iniisip natin na, okay, magiging gender identity ng batang to? Kung, yan, male. So, sabi ni Emmanuel, male siya, man, yan. So, thank you. And Mika, male. So, our expectation is, if sinabi ng doktor, male siya, ang gender identity din, ang expectation natin, siya rin bilang isang bata, magiging identity na ay male. Tapos ano yung expectation natin na magiging paraan niya ng pananamit? Wow, Jordan, may bara ka, no? Ano yung expectation natin ng pagiging kanyang pananamit, ang pagsasalita? Yan, sabi ni Emmanuel, masculine. So, expectation natin, masculine siya. Even si Miss Nemia. Tapos, ano yung next question is, what is our expectation about this child's attraction? Kanino siya magiging sexually, romantically attracted pag tanda niya? Pag meron na siyang kapasidad na magkaroon ng romantic attraction? Female, yan. So, if you notice, yung unfolding ng ating, to a girl, female, ang unfolding ng ating, ang expectation natin for a child, one determining factor lang yun. The first thing given to the child, sex assigned at birth, yan na, para na siyang domino effect na expectation natin, gender identity niya ay male, siya ay magiging masculine sa kanyang appearance at yung magiging attraction niya ay heterosexual to the opposite sex or gender. And if you notice, that's only one determining thing. Ibig sabihin nun, from the moment of birth, from the birth certificate, galing sa doktor, biglang naka-determine na ang pag-unfold ng kanyang buhay. Pero does that always happen for everyone? It doesn't. So, what our session is here today is we're looking at how do we understand Sogie and we understand diversity and the different individual differences of each person and know that how we are and how we express ourselves and who we love is our business and it's different for each person. And it's okay to have these expectations na from the sex assigned at birth, parang domino effect na yan, but it doesn't happen for everybody. And it's good to know that. So, ngayon, let's delve deeper into what does Sogie mean? Ano yung iba't ibang part ng definition natin ng Sogie, yung Sogie SC. Before kasi, Sogie lang ang ginagamit lang namin when we talk about sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. But we are now adding this second, well, last acronym, Sogie SC na yung tawag namin kasi ini-include na natin yung sex characteristics. So yung sex characteristics, kasama dito yung sex assigned at birth. It refers to the chromosomal, hormonal, and anatomical characteristics that are used to classify an individual. So chromosome, XY, XX. Meron pa bang ibang chromosome na mas malawak pa? May XXY, at iba't ibang formation. Medyo parang I think there are more than 27 different formulations of chromosomes. So hindi lang siya dalawa. Hormonal, yung levels of testosterone, of estrogen in the body, and then anatomical characteristics, yung itsura ng katawan from the outside lang, or yung mga parts natin, yung reproductive system, yung secondary sex characteristics, body hair, lahat yan. All of this is sex characteristic na very biological. Now, the other part of Sogie, SO, sexual orientation, ang definition nito ay, this is who one is attracted to romantically and sexually. So this is the people we love, we fall in love with. Gender identity naman, or GI ng Sogie is, ito yung a person's deeply felt inherent sense of being a boy, man, male, or a girl, woman, female, or an alternative gender. What does this mean? Ito yung each person defines for themselves. Sorry, there's noise outside. Each person defines for themselves ano yung gender identity nila. At saka deeply felt ito. At hindi na ibig sabihin nito, ang tao lang ang nagde-define sa kanyang gender identity. Kasi siya lang ang may kapangyarihan na mag-determine at sabihin kung ano ba yung totoong identity niya bilang isang tao na merong gender. Is it male, female, or different, another gender? And this gender identity may or may not correspond to a person's sex assigned at birth or to a person's primary or secondary sex characteristics. This means that just because an individual was assigned male at birth does not necessarily mean that the way that they feel about their sense of being, of their gender, is aligned to their sex assigned at birth or their sex characteristics. So, wait, note lang ha. There's I apologize also for the dog. So what this means is, kanina diba, expectation natin just from sex assigned at birth, tuloy-tuloy na yun. We expect that person to have their gender identity to be male. We expect their gender expression to be masculine, and we expect them to be heterosexual, to be attracted to women. But this isn't always the case. As is, parang nakita rin natin na iba't iba yung expression at pagiging ang pagkatao ng bawat tao. So it doesn't always unfold this way. Now, gender identity is internal. This is a person's gender identity is not necessarily visible to others. So this means that Just because we see someone and the way that they express themselves, how they groom, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is their gender identity. Kasi napaka-internal na this is an internal knowledge that is not necessarily visible immediately when we see a person. Now, one part of Sogie na very visible ay yung gender expression, because this is the presentation of an individual's um, gender through their clothing choice, their accessories, pati yung behavior. All of that express aspects of our gender identity or gender role. So gender expression may or may not conform to a person's gender, ha? Okay. So, example ng gender expression. Um, ano yung mga damit na alam natin na dapat na pwedeng isuot ng babae? So, usually, 'di ba? Skirt, blouse, tapos ano yung for men naman, we expect men not to wear skirts. We expect men to wear pants or shorts. Tapos ang babae, ang suot ng sapatos, high heels. Ang lalaki, kailangan walang heels yan. Tapos, ano yung expectation for the length of hair for boys? We expect boys to have short hair and girls have long hair. And then how do we expect men or to behave in terms of their actions? We expect them to be yung I notice kasi kapag sa lalaki, very square yung mga movement, parang yung kanina sinabi may parang barako. Ibig sabihin na parang very square yung mga movement, hindi masyadong malambot, hindi masyadong sensual. Tapos kapag iniisip natin sensual, babae. Pag gumalaw, may konting kembot yung katawan. So all of that is gender expression. Ngayon, ang gender expression kasi, di ba kanina sinabi natin, ang gender identity ay hindi nakikita sa kung ano yung outer form or yung labas na hindi natin alam na just because someone looks a certain way doesn't mean we can assume their gender identity. It's the same thing. Someone's way of expressing their gender does not necessarily mean that is their gender identity. So, okay. I'm noticing kasi when many people learn about Sogie for the first time, nakakalito. And totoo talagang nakakalito ang Sogie because we are learning about all the different ways that people can exist and do exist in the world. And what we're learning is how can we honor the individuality of a person. Na hindi na tayo gumagamit ng mga stereotype, yung mga ano yung tawag doon, yung all of the ideas na meron tayo sa utak natin about other people, in-expand na natin para mas malawak siya at mas masasakop yung iba't ibang variety ng bawat tao. Sorry for the dog. Now, one way for us to understand and expand our knowledge of what it means to be different, what it means to not necessarily have to be heterosexual, to have different ways of expressing our Sogie or our sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, we have a new alphabet that we're learning here. Tawag doon ay LGBTQ. So yan, very Sesame Street. So, ano ba yung LGBTQ? Uunahan ko ang LGBTQ ay naririnig natin ay community yan ng mga iba't ibang tao na iba't iba yung paraan ng expression and pagmamahal. And I guess yung identity, iba't iba rin. So, ang LGBTQ, we'll start with the T. T is transgender. Transgender individuals are those whose assigned sex at birth differs from their gender identity. Okay, so kanina yung example na binigay ng in-interview sa video, si Jake Cyrus. Na dati, yung pangalan niya dati ay Charisse. Okay? So, but now, Jake goes by Jake Cyrus. And yung kanyang sex assigned at birth ay different sa kanyang gender identity. This is what it means to be transgender. Now, one thing I think we have to take note of is gender is not something we're born with. Anong ibig sabihin nito? Nung pinanganak ang isang baby, yung example natin kanina, na yung baby, pinanganak siya, nakita ng doktor, yung katawan niya mukhang male. Parang hindi naman siya pinanganak na gusto na niya lahat ng mga sinasabi natin na na gusto ng mga lalaki. Parang hindi naman siya pinanganak na paglabas niya gusto niya parang yung unang iyak niya, humingi na siya ng baril galing kay mama, or gusto niya lang niya color blue ang kanyang isuot na mga kulay. Hindi ganoon eh. Ang gender at yung gender expression ay sinosocialize yan. Parang it's the entire we socialize and we give a child information about what is appropriate gender expressions for their sex assigned at birth. And usually, meron yan kulay, damit, ano yung pwede mong panoorin, anong pwede mong ilaro, ano yung mga laro na pwede mong gawin. Kapag lalaki, mas rough siya. Pag babae, hindi masyadong rough. All of that is trained, socialized by the family, by the media, by the school, by teachers, even by their friends. So we are not born with concepts of gender. We are born into it. We're socialized into it. So gender itself refers to attitudes, feelings, and behaviors that a given culture associates with a person's biological sex. It's behavior that is compatible with cultural expectations. And we call that gender normative. Or short, culturally based siya. Actually, kahit na iba't ibang country, iba yung kanilang expectations of gender per country. So, for example, in other countries like America, women are sometimes seen as more assertive. You can still be called feminine if you speak your mind. If you, for example, sa dating, women in other countries have it mas normal sa kanila na mag-hit on, or sila ang mag-ask out sa lalaki, hindi lalaki yung una. So, iba rin yung gender expectations for different cultures. And behaviors that are viewed as incompatible with expectations of these cultures, ang tawag doon ay gender nonconformity. So, gender is culturally based, and it's all about attitude, feelings, and behaviors na ina-associate natin sa person's biological sex or sex characteristics. So, if we look at transgender men and women, sila ay mga tao na nagmamigrate, quote-unquote, from one side of the gender spectrum to the other. So, ang ibig sabihin kasi ng trans, Latin or Greek, Latin siya for migrating from one to another. So, these are people who migrate from one side of the gender spectrum to the other. Parang si Mr. Ice Segura. Si Mr. Ice, sex assigned at birth niya ay female. Pero ang gender identity niya ay male. Ang kanyang paraan ng pag-express ng gender niya ay masculine. So, ito si Ice meron siyang partner, babae. At si Ice bilang yan, si Ice naman bilang because the gender identity of Ice is male, so gender identity niya male, at yung partner niya ay babae, at alam natin na attracted lang si Ice Segura sa mga babae. Ang kanyang sexual orientation ay ano? So kung ang isang gender identity na lalaki na male ay attracted lang sa babae, tawag doon heterosexual. So si Ice, ang kanyang sexual orientation ay straight or heterosexual. Yan. So yan na. I know this part medyo nakakalito, but these are important nuances or different ways of understanding trans people and LGBTQ community, because what we're looking at is ang sexual orientation ay base sa gender identity ng isang tao at ang gender identity ng mga tao na in love siya or romantically involved. So, another person in the public eye na Pinoy na transgender ay si Angie King. Si Angie King, siya yung partner ni Joey Mead, yung model at saka actress. At si Angie King din yung, I think, parang may-ari siya ng iba't ibang chains ng Victoria Court. Oo. Yung Victoria Court na alam ng madami sa community. Charot. Okay. So, Angie King's sex assigned at birth is male. Ang gender identity niya ay female. Ang kanyang expression ng kanyang gender ay mostly feminine. Ngayon, ano yung sexual orientation niya? Given na meron pa rin siyang romantic and sexual relationship with her wife, Joey Mead. So, hindi siya specified. Hindi pa niya parang kina-clarify. But, in that relationship, because Angie King is, her gender identity is female, and the gender identity of her wife or the partner she's with is female, their relationship is what we would call lesbian. Kasi dalawang babae yun. Okay? Okay, there's a question. Sige. We'll go to the questions later. I know that there are like 15 minutes to give questions later, and we will allot time for that. So there are different ways of transitioning. There's living. The first one way of going through transition for a trans individual is to live in the self-identified gender. Clothes, hair, voice, para siyang social transitioning where a transgender person lives in the gender that they identify with. Their clothes, their hair, their voice, all of that will minsan they go through a transformation where they align the way that they express their outer form with their inner identity. Another way, which I think many of you heard, yung hormone therapy, yung umiinom ng estrogen or for trans women or umiinom ng nagte-take ng testosterone for trans men. This is another way of transitioning. Another is gender affirming surgeries for the face, the chest, the body parts, all of that, all to affirm their gender so that they can align their outer form with their inner identity. And of course, yung last na hindi siya common at hindi na ibibigay sa mga transgender Pinoys ay seeking legal recognition of their gender identity. Yung papalitan na yung mga documents for birth certificate, passport, all of that in alignment with their gender identity. So these are different ways of transitioning and all of them are valid and hindi siya parang one step, second step. Trans individual makes a decision at any step, but what they're comfortable doing, and at every step, all of that is valid. So, what about those who aren't transgender? Do they have a gender identity? Many people are not transgender. I'm sure most of us here in the session for today, many of us are not transgender. So, ano yung tawag sa mga taong hindi transgender? There is a psychological and medical term for people who are not transgender. It's called cisgender. Cisgender is an adjective used to describe a person whose gender identity aligns with their sex assigned at birth. For short, ang taong hindi transgender. Yung cis kasi, di ba kanina transgender? Cis is a term from Latin meaning on this side of, meaning parang nandito, parang sex assigned at birth, and then you were on the side of your gender identity is on the same side of the sex assigned at birth. So, opposite siya ng trans, meaning yung trans kasi on the other side of. So, parang it's the opposite term for trans. It means cis, meaning my sex assigned at birth is male and I identify as male. That is what cisgender is. Pag trans, different yun. So even people who are not transgender have a gender identity. It's called cisgender. This is the term of the American Psychological Association. Now, let's go to the other parts of the LGBTQ community, yung L. I'm sure we've heard about this. Yung L ay lesbian. Lesbians are women attracted to and form romantic relationships with other women. A famous lesbian in Hollywood is Jodie Foster. Yan. G is gay men are men attracted to and form romantic relationships with other men. This is Mama Pao. So Pao Ballesteros, famous drag queen and performer and host. B. B are bisexual people who are attracted to and form relationships with both men and women. Bisexual is bi kasi comes from the word two. So bisexual people are attracted to both men and women. A famous bisexual celebrity is Angelina Jolie and in Hollywood. Q. Q, yung term na to, Q is queer. Ang queer naman, umbrella term siya that individuals use to describe sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression that does not conform to dominant societal norms. Naging umbrella term siya. Dati kasi ginagamit ang queer to insult other people, pero ang ginawa ng newer generation, ang tawag dito, reclaim. Parang in-own up na queer is a term we're going to change the meaning. Hindi na siya magiging insulto sa amin. Kasi we can use it to describe the different ways of expressing your Sogie. So, this girl that we have on the screen, hindi siya masyadong sikat, but her name is Jamila Jamil. She is a Asian American actress, or Asian British actress and model who calls herself queer. Now, asexuality is another term, di ba? LGBTQ, mahaba pa yun, meron pang IA. Ang A dito ay asexual. Asexual individuals asexuality is a sexual orientation that is characterized by not feeling sexual attraction or desire for partnered sexuality. Distinct siya from celibacy, which is the deliberate abstention from sexual activity. Some asexual people do have sex, but there are many ways of being asexual. What does this mean? There are individuals kasi who do not have the same sexual attractions or desires as other people, na hindi nila kailangan yung sexual aspect of having a romantic relationship. So these people are called asexual, or yung short term is ace. And yung ginagamit na parang short term ng mga parang Gen Z, ACE is ACE. Parang if you see that in their profiles of Twitter or Instagram, that means asexual. Okay, last one is pansexual. Pansexual is, ibig sabihin nito, romantic and sexual attraction to all gender groups, any gender expression, any gender identity. So, one celebrity na ganito ay si Miley Cyrus. Pansexual. Ang ibig sabihin kasi ng pan is all. Parang Latin or Greek siya for all. Now, another one medical term, this is a medical term na that is part of the LGBTQIA community is what we call intersex. Ang intersex is a person born with reproductive or sexual anatomy that does not fit the binary or yung dalawa lang na male and female. Yung sex characteristics ay atypical. Chromosome, gonads, or even genitals, atypical, hindi siya formed in the normal way. And one of the loud, out and proud and advocates for the intersex community in the Philippines is Mr. Jeff Kagandahan. Yung story ni Mr. Jeff is very fascinating kasi nung bata siya, intersex na siya. Ibig sabihin yung katawan niya ay hindi mukhang typical na male or female, hindi ma-determine ng doktor. Pero, ang ginawa ng doktor, nag-determine siya for Mr. Jeff. As in, parang inopera siya para mag-conform sa idea ng doktor kung anong magiging gender identity niya. So pinalaki si Mr. Jeff bilang babae at nagkaroon siya ng surgeries to change her body, his body when he was a baby to look like a girl. And nung lumaki siya, parang naramdaman niya na parang yung gender identity niya, hello, yes, ay very different from what he understands gender identity to be. And nung later on, nagkaroon siya ng way to fight for his gender identity recognition. So naiba niya yung kanyang legal documents in the Philippines as an intersex individual. You can look online about Mr. Jeff Kagandahan. Madami siya mga interviews about his experience. So, last is romantic orientation. Romantic orientation is attraction or non-attraction to other people characterized by the expression or lack of expression of love. So, hindi siya sexual. May mga tao kasi,
Hindi, matrip ka ganyan,
yes. Okay. So, romantic orientation kasi is different from, there are some people who don't feel sexual orientation, they feel more romantic orientation. So, it can also be fluid. I'm just adding this here para alam natin na there's a difference between sexual and romantic orientation. So, one way that we like to teach about gender is what we call the gender unicorn. So, yung gender unicorn, if you look at it, yan, ang cute, di ba? May gender na purple. Lahat ng define natin ng mga concepts, nandito sa gilid sa right portion. There's gender identity, gender expression, sex assigned at birth, physical attraction, and emotional attraction. Yung emotional attraction can also be romantic attraction. So, if you notice, may parang circle, tapos may line na arrow, papuntang definition. So, there's under gender identity, there's a circle with an arrow going to female, there's a circle going to male, and there's a circle going to other. Lahat tayo, we all have different levels of understanding our own gender identity. So, from the leftmost for gender identity, this is 0. To infinity na yan, to 100, parang gano'n, to female. And to 0 to male, 0 to other gender. So, for example, ako, if I'm going to use this I'm going to use this framework and I'm going to use this and as my guide to understand myself. For example, me, my gender identity, parang ako, to be honest, parang gender identity, medyo baka 20 na girly. Parang gano'n. Tapos gender identity ko for male, baka 80. Tapos other gender ko, baka 100. Parang gano'n. So each person, iba yung ating levels of understanding us. And we can use the gender unicorn for our own self-understanding and self-knowledge. And also, when we understand ourselves in this way, it also helps us to understand other people. So I encourage you, you can go to www.transstudent.org /gender. Kasi this is an available resource online. Ginawa siya ng mga trans students. So, from LGBTQ to Sogie, what does this mean? We're learning about this alphabet. It means that being trans and cisgender is about you and your experience of gender identity and gender identity and expression as a gendered person living in a gendered society. Kasi, again, gender is not something na pinanganak tayo na parang alam na natin. We are trained and born into it, and we learn about the different norms about gender. And it's our own experience that guides us about who we are and how we learn about our truths. And being lesbian, gay, bisexual, pansexual, and even heterosexual is all about you and the partners that you have attractions to, crushes with, romantic relationships with. For short, it's your own sexual orientation and your own romantic orientation. And ikaw lang ang makaka-determine nun. All of us have our own. And this is the whole point of it. Because we all have gender identities. We all have ways of expressing our gender. And we all have different sexual and romantic orientations that only us can determine. Okay? So, I think I'll just go through it very quickly lang. Many LGBTQ Filipinos experience, we are a gender minority and sexual minority. And stigma, which will be talked about later, is a common factor. So later, you'll really talk about ano ba yung ibig sabihin ng stigma. It's discrimination, it's rejection, it's teasing, bullying, and it's sometimes instituted by the state where it's illegal to be LGBTQ. In other countries, there's death penalty. Or it's also institutional stigma by religion. So, iba siya. So, I just want to note that in the research of mental health in the medical field, research has shown that being gay, lesbian, bisexual, heterosexual, and transgender are all happy different variants of human sexuality and gender identity. Even in the transgender in the International Statistical Classification of Diseases and Related Health Problems by the World Health Organization, um, they have taken out the concept of being transsexual as an identity disorder. It's now called gender incongruence and gender incongruence in childhood and adolescence. And gender incongruence is no longer seen by the World Health Organization as a mental health disorders. It is now considered a condition related to sexual health. It is not a mental disorder. And this reflects the current knowledge that being trans and gender diverse identities are not conditions of mental ill health, and that calling them mental health disorders will create enormous stigma. So it's not hindi siya nagko-cause ng negative ng mental disorder ang pagiging LGBTQ or transgender. So yeah na. So this is because what they want is gender incongruence is for people, for trans people to access gender affirming healthcare. There needs to be a diagnosis kasi for them to access healthcare and health insurance in their different countries. So what now? What's the question? The role we hope all of us come out of this. Kasi madaming information to, and it's all new. And later we have time for questions. But what's the role in all of this? We hope that we practice empathy, give kindness, act with compassion, and know that each person has their own truth that we are trying to learn, and allow other people to tell their truth. And that is their parang karapatan nila yon. So our role is to create safe spaces for people to share their stories and to provide support. So I think this is where my presentation ends, and I will open the floor. Hopefully, we have the capacity to create environments of acceptance, kindness, compassion, and love for everyone of all gender identities and expressions. So I don't know how much time we have for questions, but I think there